Part 30. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 291. Compared to the previous simultaneous serialization of 3 comics, now only Clannad is serialized in the monthly magazine, and the weekly Dream Eater will not be serialized until after the new year, so Takahashi Makoto no longer has to stay up late to finish the comic manuscripts like before. And the assistants have also gotten rid of the heavy work and have more free time, no wonder. Before, when Takahashi Makoto was serializing 3 comic manuscripts at the same time, the assistants, like Takahashi Makoto, often stayed up late, after the end of the yokai era, because of some reasons of Takahashi Makoto, the assistants had a rare holiday. But after the holiday, everyone faced the comic manuscripts on the table, and they were no longer in the joyful mood before. Hey, Chen, this number seems a bit exaggerated. Ding Ding looked at the comic manuscripts on the table, his mouth twitching constantly, and looked at Takahashi Makoto with a puzzled look. Are all of them serialized comic manuscripts? Yes, all. Takahashi Makoto showed a matter-of-fact look, and also looked at the assistants with a puzzled look. By the way, my comics are now serialized in monthly magazines, don't you know? Ueno Aoi pointed at the comic manuscripts on the table and complained unhappily, of course I know this, but, this number seems a bit wrong? Although I also know that a lot of comic manuscripts are indeed needed for serialized monthly magazines, but this is too much, isn't it? Huh? A lot? One person is responsible for a month's comic manuscripts. It shouldn't be a lot. Hey. One person is responsible for a month. The assistants looked at the comic manuscripts on their desks and had completely fallen into crazy mode. Originally, 4 people worked together to complete a month's worth of comics, which was already a lot of work. Now, it has become that only one person has to complete the work of 4 people, and each person has to do 1 copy. Speaking of which, Takahashi Makoto's attitude is so matter-of-fact, and it is indeed a Chuyunibu with a devilish nature. My followers, rest assured. Although the king is a lone existence, in view of your struggle, no, in view of you, in order to show your proud talents in front of the king, I will be with you. It's a pity that it's a white coat and eye mask, as expected, if at this time, wearing the shining gold armor and sitting on the throne with a lone and arrogant face, Takahashi Makoto, you will be closer to the image of the king. Speaking of which, even if it is necessary for the monthly serialization, it is not necessary. The depressed Ueno Aoi seemed to want to struggle. Besides, the work of our assistants is just to assist the cartoonists and complete the comics within the specified time. There is no need to be so hasty, right? In other words, do you all think that it is enough to complete the work within the specified time? Looking at the indignant assistants, Takahashi Makoto pondered for a moment, and then showed a disdainful look on his face. I originally thought that you have followed me for a while, and you are willing to assist me wholeheartedly in conquering the world. It is true, laziness is indeed the irresistible original sin of mankind. Does this have anything to do with conquering the world? Because of the long-term cooperation, the assistants have established a good level of tacit understanding, and even subconscious complaints can achieve a resonance effect. The bond between people should not be underestimated. In fact, those comic manuscripts are not that many. Takahashi Makoto narrowed his right eye, looked at the assistants who were about to launch the act of rebellion, stood up and took out a cardboard box from under the desk, and looked at everyone with a sad face. There are a lot of comic manuscripts that need to be completed. If you keep procrastinating like this, you won't be able to respond to the waiting comic manuscripts, which are calling from your soul. Think about these sealed comic manuscripts, right? They have been waiting in the dark world for thousands of years. If you keep making excuses like this, you won't be able to release these sealed comic manuscripts. Have you ever considered, do you feel the feelings of these comics? The unwilling souls of the comics are crying. The assistants wanted to complain about Makoto Takahashi's increasingly excited tone, but when they thought of the comics piled up on the table, after looking at each other, the assistants decisively chose to ignore the fanatical middle school cartoonist, walked to their respective seats, and began to enter the hard work mode. 3 hours later, Ding Ding, the temporary leader of the assistants, sighed for a long time, led the assistants, exited the work mode, and prepared to take a short break before continuing to fight with the remaining comics. However, when Ding Ding was resting, he saw Makoto Takahashi lying on the table, drawing seriously, and couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Although Ding Ding felt that Makoto Takahashi's achievements today were indeed closely related to such a fanatical working state, but when he saw the remaining comics on his desk, Ding Ding still couldn't face the reality. There are so many comics that we can't finish them all in at least a month, but Takahashi Makoto seems to think it's not enough and keeps drawing. Hey, Makoto, why don't you take a break? The number of comics we have now is enough to support a 6-month monthly publication. There's no need. Give up, Uncle Tintin. In your memory, has Cheng heard our consolation? Although when Aoi is a woman, she is lying on the sofa without any image at this moment. She had been working hard before. This girl's energy has been burned out. And now Cheng is painting. In this case, it's best not to behave strangely, unless you want to experience the intimate contact between your body and the floor. Regarding when Aoi's kind reminder, Mayuri and Shizukawa nodded in agreement, and at the same time looked at Tintin standing behind Makoto Takahashi with sympathy, because according to past practice, what will happen next is when Makoto Takahashi performed the back throw, the target of the technique was undoubtedly Tintin with the Death Star shining brightly. Yoshi, Obelisk Titan weapon is complete. Makoto Takahashi put down his brush, turned around and saw Tintin looking at him with a troubled face, and scratched his head in confusion. My dependent, Tintin, what do you want? For the sake of your sincerity, I can give you a chance to solve your doubts today. This is... Ding Ding looked at the completed sketch by Makoto Takahashi, with a tangled look on his face. He reached out to pick up the completed sketch, but was slapped away by Makoto Takahashi. Be careful. Because there is no existence recognized by God, if you touch God at will, you will be punished by God. Although Takahashi Makoto explained to Tintin with a serious face, his hands moved without any scruples. The work that had just been completed was quickly rolled into a circle and stuffed into the drawer rather roughly. Don't show that eager look, because God is not something that you mortals can control. If you want to use God, you must pay accordingly the price. Look at my left eye. Although it is said that I lost my sight due to some accidents, the truth is not like that. After I came to this world, I felt uneasy and chose to go there in order to eliminate the hostility of the entire world. Traveling to Egypt. Then in the following time, Takahashi Makoto began to instill relevant attempts at the law of cause and effect to the people beside his assistants. For example, he received divine punishment in Egypt, which was the cause of everything, and the accident in which he lost his left eye was it is a necessary process to decipher cause and effect, and losing the left eye is a natural result. Ah, I feel even more tired after listening to Mr. Takahashi Makoto say this. Jing-He pushed up his glasses and looked helplessly at a middle-level manga artist in a white coat. Although that dark game I mentioned occasionally before sounds very interesting, but... Same feeling. But maybe this is the source of Xiao Cheng's inspiration. Looking at Makoto Takahashi, who was still telling Tintin about various dark rituals, Aoi Ueno also felt that her fatigue level was rising, with a melancholy look on her face. She lamented, obviously when I was drawing Clannad before, I almost cried when I saw it, but now, I am no longer moved or anything like that. Huh? Sister Aoi, why do I feel completely opposite to you? Jing-He looked at Ueno Aoi with some surprise, and pointed at the comic manuscript he had completed before. When I was drawing, in order not to laugh, I endured it very hard. The character of Haruhara Hinata is so interesting, and he is bullied in various ways by the evil male protagonist Okazaki Tomoya. Eh? Is that so? Mayuri is in charge of Okazaki Tomoya and his father's part. I always feel that Okazaki Tomo's father is too much. Speaking of the plot of the comic, Mayuri was a little dissatisfied. He pouted, tilted his head and stared at Makoto Takahashi, who was still telling stories to Tintin, and warned weakly in a low voice, "After the Phoenix Academy, you will never become that kind of father." Humph. Mayuri, I heard it. Makoto Takahashi finally let go of Tintin and turned to look at the trio of assistants who were discussing comics. A strange smile appeared on his face, and the four people on the assistant side looked at him with doubts. Among them, he sorted out the previously completed comic manuscripts in order and put them on the table. "It seems that your mission is progressing well. As a reward, now let you experience it in advance, called healing and love the true meaning of it." Seeing the four people beside his assistant starting to read the manga manuscript with confused eyes, Makoto Takahashi nodded with satisfaction, turned around and walked into the kitchen. A certain owner of the Crystal Palace who used magic in cooking once said that the highest level of cooking is to integrate happiness and sadness into the food, so that people who eat it can feel the so-called emotions from the food. Although Takahashi Makoto has not mastered the high-end technology of cooking with magic, with the ability of the comic Clannad, he can achieve the same effect as an ingredient in meals. The key to success or failure depends on understanding. I wonder if my relatives can feel the true meaning of love and healing? Ah, I'm really looking forward to it. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 292. After Clannad was serialized in the monthly magazine, the response to the first chapter was pretty good. At least the cheerful daily comic at the beginning made many readers forget about the tragedies of the previous monster era and the murder of the Phoenix Academy. The big devil relaxed his vigilance. Although Takahashi Makoto has repeatedly emphasized that the three comics used in the future showdown plan will make the whole world burst into tears, but judging from the current situation, only the Kanon game has appeared sad. The sadistic ending is completely unable to achieve the exaggerated effect that Takahashi Makoto said before. Most readers and editors think so. As a comic series, Clannad draws another branch line based on the dream of the male protagonist Tomoya Okazaki. However, compared to the one-episode content used for serialization, this branch content is really too little. Not only is the content intermittent, but it also seems to have nothing to do with the main plot. Most readers didn't pay much attention to this content and chose to ignore it. Of course, there are also some intuitive readers who are a little concerned about this seemingly boring plot. After all, the original author of the manga is Phoenix Inferno. Although in terms of personality, readers have gained the common impression of a Chuyunibu cartoonist, but readers have a deep understanding of his ferocious layout ability. Especially in the past, the era of monsters that once made readers almost rebel. When he first entered the door, Yoshida thought it was his illusion. The atmosphere in Takahashi Makoto's house was a bit solemn today. Although he was a little surprised that all the assistants were present, Yoshida did not say anything, although according to usual practice, in the comics when discussing comics with the editor, the assistant usually chooses to hide all the staff. However, today is a bit abnormal. The assistant who should have left long ago, now all the assistants stay at Takahashi Makoto's house. This scene seems to have a familiar feeling. Yoshida was sure that it was not his illusion. Something must have happened before he came here. Especially after he took over the manga manuscript from Makoto Takahashi, the unusual actions taken by all the assistants proved his suspicion. Tintin stood alone on the balcony, smoking a cigarette with a depressed look on his face. Shizuka lowered his head and scrawled something on the paper with the brush in his hand. When Oaoi held Mayuri's hand tightly and whispered while whispering, I visually noticed that the lilies were being watered. I have received the content of the second chapter of Clannad. Thank you for your hard work. After sorting out the manga manuscript, Yoshida had to read the manga first. whether out of editor's responsibility or out of curiosity as a reader. So, what's going on with everyone's expressions? Is there something wrong with this comic draft? Naturally, Yoshida was not stupid. When he was about to look through the comic manuscript, he noticed the strange expressions of the people beside his assistant. He vaguely guessed that there was something wrong with the comic manuscript in his hand, but Yoshida couldn't help it and wanted to read the comic. "Well, Mr. Yoshida." Mayuri, the kindest assistant on the side, looked at Yoshida's behavior and couldn't help but want to say something, but was naturally interrupted by Makoto Takahashi. "Hey. My relatives, whether it is a kind reminder or a friendly suggestion, in the face of the righteousness of killing my cats, any suspicious behavior is not allowed, so, don't do unnecessary things." While saying not to remind Yoshida, he deliberately revealed that there were big holes in the manga manuscript to tempt Yoshida to become even more curious. "Makoto Takahashi, your bad taste will end at the end of the world." "Can it end?" Although Yoshida stared at Makoto Takahashi thoughtfully for a long time before reading the manga, but faced with the unusually weird reactions of everyone and Makoto Takahashi's nasty reminder, Yoshida knew the manga manuscript. "Even though I had questions, I still couldn't help my curiosity and started to look through the manga manuscripts. Should I say that Yoshida deserves to have the nature of a cat?" As a result, under the sympathetic gaze of his assistant, Yoshida gave the reaction that Makoto Takahashi expected. "Holy crap! What's going on with this development? You've been talking about it with all kinds of joy before, so why is there such a sudden turn of events? Although it has been mentioned in the comics before, but to such an extent, such a development. Just this level makes you so panic, my beloved cat. It seems that your practice is not enough." Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with contempt, and then turned to the assistants who were gradually gathering. On the side, today's taunting training began. The same goes for you. You are obviously a descendant of the Demon King, but you can't even accept this level. Were those previous trials in vain? Those enemies you once pushed against, I'm crying now. Should I say that he is worthy of being the most ferocious Demon King of the Phoenix Academy? Ding Ding sighed, put out the cigarette butt in his hand, and showed a bitter smile on his face. Logically speaking, the touching level of this plot can only be regarded as average. But the problem is, Chang, the content you drew before made us think that this comic is about happiness and daily life. Who would have thought? Hey. It's just a comic now. Just be satisfied. You know, when I saw this paragraph, it was accompanied by, Takahashi Makoto suddenly thought of something, stopped mid-sentence, and the look on his face became a little strange. Under everyone's curious and doubtful gaze, he suddenly stood up in a hurry and ran into the study. Yoshida felt a little depressed. Just like Tintin said, he had begun to read Clannad as a funny comic. After all, the pair of Okazaki Tomo and Haruhara Hinata were so funny. Especially Haruhara Yuhei, under the instigation of Okazaki Tomoya, used various methods to contact Tomoyo Sakegami, and ended up being tortured in various ways. This part is quite hilarious and interesting. However, later in the manga, in order to repay Tomoya Okazaki for helping him, Nagisa Furukawa waits for the part where Tomoya Okazaki comes to the basketball court on a rainy day. Yoshida feels a little depressed. When he sees Nagisa Furukawa in the manga, he passed the basketball to Tomoya Okazaki in anticipation, and when he was about to watch the opponent shoot, the comic entered the massacre stage. The basketball thrown by Tomoya Okazaki did not fly into the basket in a beautiful arc, but fell to the ground wet by the rain. Tomoya Okazaki knelt down with a look of weakness on his face and began to. He told the astonished Nagisa Furukawa about past events. I couldn't lift my right arm. When I was in the 3rd grade of junior high school, I injured my right hand in a fight with my dad. I couldn't lift my hand above my shoulder. I can no longer play basketball. Furukawa Nagisa, who has remained kind-hearted since his appearance, thought that his request had touched upon Okazaki Tomo's sad past, and he kept apologizing with a guilty look on his face. "I'm sorry, I always let Okazaki Saki-kun is in trouble." Although it does not account for a large proportion in the manga manuscript, this short part of the content made Yoshida feel quite depressed after reading it. At this time, Yoshida finally realized why his assistant's expression was so weird. "Ah, Mr. Yoshida, you are indeed like this too." Ueno Aoi spread her hands helplessly and turned her head away. "This is just a comic, you better not take it too seriously." "Hey, Aoi-chan, are you qualified to say this? After you finished reading yesterday, you couldn't stop crying and didn't even eat dinner." Tintin unceremoniously exposed Ueno Aoi's dark history, breaking Ueno's heart. "Aoi's pretending to be strong, the effect is outstanding." "Ahem, actually the way you are watching is not correct." Makoto Takahashi suddenly appeared, holding a CD in his hand and looking at the people beside his assistant seriously. "According to my original world, when watching Clannad, be sure to pair it with this song. Under this observation mode, you will no longer feel depressed." So under the strong recommendation of Makoto Takahashi, along with the music of Shioming, the assistants and editor, Yoshida looked through the manga manuscript, and what Makoto Takahashi said was correct. It was completed this time. Everyone was in tears, a character achievement. "It's the same as I heard that chocolate and music go together better on rainy days. As expected, when watching Clannad, you must listen to Shioming." Sure enough, this is the correct viewing mode. Shioming said very well. "Let me reiterate, there are still 3 days until the exam. The visual exam is going to be tragic. When I read the book in the past 2 days, I actually thought of various plots. Ah, a certain cat is dead." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao-do SD Email. Chapter 293. Inheriting the will of the previous generation and carrying the promise that must be fulfilled, Yumha Ashiro maintained the evil style while incorporating elements of the orthodox style to create the new manga reversi. In order to become the trump card of Shonen Jump and the world's #1 cartoonist, Eiji Nizuma was inspired by Yumha Ashiro's evil style comics and created the manga Zombie Gun, which is mainly based on the orthodox style and incorporates the evil style. These two comics, which were influenced by each other, were published in Shonen Jump in the form of short stories, and they broke the short story vote record of Shonen Jump one after another. However, Yumha Ashiro's reversi broke the short story vote record by surpassing Zombie Gun by 2 votes. Faced with such a result, the editors naturally realized the terrifying potential of these two comics. So after consulting with the cartoonist, the editor decided to let Itsuji Yumha and Nizuma Eiji serialize these two comics in Shonen Jump at the same time, and because of the change on the cartoonist side, the editor decided to postpone the serialization of cartoonist Hao Wing-Kuma's comic Dream Eater a little bit after it is completed. Although the editor is also optimistic about Makoto Takahashi's Dream Eater, it is still a little lacking compared to those two brutal comics. So in order to persuade Makoto Takahashi to postpone the serialization of Dream Eater, the editor sorted out several reasons, such as this is to protect the result of this comic from being too bad, or this is to prevent cartoonist Hao Wing-Kuma from suffering a Waterloo, and so on. I have to say that everyone on the editor's side is also very hard-working. Although the new editor-in-chief had made full mental preparations for the postponement of the serialization of Dream Eaters after making the decision, and personally went to Takahashi Makoto to explain the reasons, considering Takahashi Makoto's personality, the new editor-in-chief Pingzi, who came to Takahashi Makoto's house, was still quite nervous when facing Takahashi Makoto. However, the result was somewhat unexpected. The various brutal things imagined by the new editor-in-chief did not happen. Takahashi Makoto agreed to the request to postpone the serialization of Dream Eaters for a period of time quite happily. So happy that even the new editor-in-chief and Yoshida, who heard about it for the first time, felt unreal. Although Takahashi Makoto agreed readily, this cartoonist with a second-year syndrome, is it really so easy to communicate? Although the expected effect has been achieved, the new editor-in-chief was not happy. With a lot of doubts, he left Takahashi Makoto's house with a tangled face. It has to be said that the editors who have been calculated by Makoto Takahashi many times in the past few years have been tossed out by someone with paranoia, although in a sense, the intuition of the new editor this time is not wrong. It's a bit hard to understand, why would you, Chen, agree to such a condition today? Angry Yoshida has begun to doubt whether the person in front of him is leaning over by a strange thing. From the perspective of the editor-in-chief, Yoshida is quite unhappy that the editor-in-chief treats the cartoonists under his command like this. Although I also admit that whether it is Ashiro Mumin or Nazuma Eiji, their comics are indeed very good. But your Dream Eater, Chen, is not so bad that it has to be postponed for this reason, right? In a sense, as the number one troublesome cartoonist in the eyes of the editor, if the comics have to be postponed just because of Makoto Takahashi's own reasons, then it is still within the scope of what Yoshida can accept. However, this time it was different. It was simply because the two comics of Ahomyumha and Naizuma Eiji were decided to be serialized at the same time, which delayed the Dream Eater that Takahashi Makoto had passed the serialization meeting. This far-fetched reason was completely unacceptable to Yoshida. If it weren't for Takahashi Makoto's very happy compromise. Even if he had a little hesitation about the editor-in-chief's suggestion, Yoshida would definitely argue with the editor-in-chief. However, looking at Takahashi Makoto's nonchalant look, Yoshida felt like hitting cotton with all his strength. What is this? It was obviously Takahashi Makoto who was treated unfairly, and he complained about it, but in the end, he didn't take it seriously at all. As expected, the guy with the second-year syndrome is the most annoying existence in the world. Well, and I am really a fool for being so busy. My cat, you are such a fool. Although I can completely understand your unwillingness and resentment. Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida's angry expression, nodded with satisfaction, squinted his right eye, and showed a weird smile on his face. But in view of your reward for your loyalty, I can tell you a little bit of the reason. Huh? Well, thank you very much. Yoshida said that he had seen Takahashi Makoto's mind-reading ability many times, so he is not as surprised as before. The content of the comic Dream Eaters, my beloved cat, you should have read it, right? Takahashi Makoto pointed to the comic manuscript on the table and began to explain to Yoshida with a smile. You should also know that in this comic, there is no clone of me, Hao Winkuma. In other words, in the world line where this comic is located, there is no existence of cartoonist Hao Winkuma. This is what I often said before, the problem of incompatible world lines. World line or something, because it's very important, do you have to repeat it 3 times? Although he was listening to Takahashi Makoto's explanation, at this time, Yoshida couldn't help but complain. However, judging from Yoshida's reaction, Takahashi Makoto's reason seemed to have dissipated a lot of Yoshida's anger, at least it was already this time. Yoshida wanted to complain, didn't he? Humph. My beloved cat, are you too complacent? If it weren't for the fact that you lost your mind because of your anger and violated the dignity of the Demon King, I would have punished you long ago. It looked like it was recalling something. Yoshida showed a scared look on his face. Makoto Takahashi nodded with satisfaction and continued to explain the reason why he agreed to delay the manga. Then, according to what was said before, because the world lines are incompatible, so in the manga, the protagonist group Ajumumenha, whether it was when they first debuted or in the final period of manga serialization, they have never encountered the person cartoonist Hohoin Kayama. Huh? Could it be that you agreed to serialize this time because you want to see how far Ajumumenha can develop without the existence of manga artist Phoenix Institute Kuma? Although I really want to praise Yoshida for your understanding, You should still have some memory and patience. Didn't you see that Makoto Takahashi has already begun to summon the demon sword Broken Star? My beloved cat, your IQ, as expected, stopping taking true knowledge is the right choice. Correct answer. Although this is the most trivial reason among them. But as for the real reason, my beloved cat, unfortunately, knowing this is already cheating on you. The rest of the content is far beyond the scope of your current authority. As a morally responsible majesty, it is impossible for you to recharge now. Keep renewing your plug-in, so just give up now. Looking at Yoshida's troubled expression, Takahashi Makoto showed a satisfied smile. Of course, if you want to know the real reason, you have to read it. The price you paid, such as Hell Dungeon, single playing the fierce Demon King of the Phoenix Academy and so on, I welcome you to challenge. Although Takahashi Makoto had a look of great anticipation on his face, it was a pity that Yoshida had never thought about clearing the Hell Dungeon alone. I have never thought about committing suicide for a flimsy reason. And you, Aiken, you have a really bad character. Many things, half said or half done, are really annoying. For example, Takahashi Makoto's appetizing behavior, after saying that the key in the manga is to trick the readers with Cocker's plot, he started to use human curiosity to trap and kill Yoshida. Takahashi Makoto, you as the great trap-killing devil, are you preparing to use the inherent barrier trap-killing at the point of time to invade from the second dimension to the third dimension? Of course, the parties involved, Mumenha Aho, and his destined enemy new wife Eiji, who are currently locked in a fight, do not know about this matter at the moment. As for the future, haha. This is also one of the conditions for Makoto Takahashi to agree to the new editor-in-chief. It's not because Takahashi Makoto has thoughts like, I don't want them to feel guilty because of me when the real sword is about to win or lose, and not be able to fight with their opponents with all their strength. That's why they agreed to the editor's requests. I just have the attitude of simply wanting to see the collision of will and will, and the limit that humans can reach with faith. Tisk. Although as a time observer, it is indeed a good choice to witness this interesting victory, but I am still a little bit regretful that I was not able to participate in this war. After Yoshida sent off with a troubled face, Takahashi Makoto poured himself a glass of wine and drank alone. Although it seems that it's too late to participate now, let's forget it. After all, I have been performing on the stage all this time. It's not bad to be an audience for the first time. Will the power of good gay friends break through the sky, or will the burning fighting spirit of the Black Flame King burn the earth? I will wait and see what happens after the world line is changed. Speaking of this showdown between Ajuma Menha and Shinzuma Eiji, Takahashi Makoto did not join and could only be a bystander. There must be resentment and so on. Although Makoto Takahashi didn't show it before in order to appease the angry Yoshida, but when he was alone at home. But it's okay. When both sides are busy fighting, they choose to launch the future showdown plan of the social era and lead humans all over the world into a world line of tears, in order to please my Phoenix Academy fierce master the soul of the Demon King, to make up for my regret and loss of not participating in this battle. Ha 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 ha, all of this, is the choice of Steins Gate. Cheng-kun, we are back. Huh. Did something happen? Why are you smiling so happily? I feel like I'm a little excited tonight. Turning to look at Rina, Makoto Takahashi squinted his eyes with a look of anticipation on his face, which, you finally came back with the power of inheritance from the demon world. So, do you want to take a shower first, or, do you want to eat first? Hey, Takahashi Makoto, is this the reason why you are so excited tonight? Dare I ask where Nai's moral integrity lies? I am going to try to write something that will ignite my blood, and I hope that when you read it, you can wish me good luck in martial arts. Ahem, this shouldn't be a flag. I have exams over the weekend, so it is unlikely that I will update. Well, let's see what happens. That's all. Meow. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 294. The second future showdown plan and someone's intuition to break through the sky. Compared to Takahashi Makoto, who has begun to accumulate strength and prepares to take revenge on mankind, Ajumenha has suffered an unprecedented crisis. Due to previous negotiations with the editor, the comic PCP originally serialized on Shonen Jump will be replaced by the new comic Reversi. After PCP completes the last 2 chapters of Young Jump, it will shift its battle position to the monthly magazine. Although Ajumenha also knows that Takahashi Makoto is currently being serialized in a monthly magazine, the two of them are not too worried. After all, PCP has been serialized in Shonen Jump for a long time. Readers' side, the support rate is quite high. Of course, at this moment, Ajumenha doesn't know how cruel the comic planet is. Especially before Makoto Takahashi entered the monthly series, in order to increase the lethality of this comic, he specially prepared a super cruel killer. After the great success of the short story Reversi, Ajumenha got this opportunity to change the serial work, which made the two good friends a little too happy, and even forgot that it actually takes time to complete the manga manuscript, so when after Hattori editor kindly explained the situation to the two of them, Ajumenha was in tragedy. Within a month, it is necessary to complete the last 2 chapters of the weekly serialization of PCP, the 4 new chapters of Reversi, and the first chapter of the monthly serialization of PCP, according to Landai's budget. As long as most of the rest time is reduced, I should be able to finish the entire manga draft before submission. However, until now, I have determined one thing. The right hand holding the brush is shaking constantly, but Landai still has no idea of stopping painting, but grits his teeth and persists. Hey, Chiren, that guy Aiken is definitely an outsider. Ah, I feel the same way. Even though I rubbed my eyes vigorously, it was completely impossible to eliminate the dark circles under my eyes in this way. Mr. Huang Mao Glasses put the compiled comic manuscript aside and did not stop his work due to physical fatigue. When I saw Cheng serializing 3 comics at the same time, I felt that the editor was too much. It's biased. Now when we actually get to this point, I understand why that guy Aiken always calls himself the Demon King. That kind of existence with monster physical strength should not appear in the human world at all. You should be thrown into the demon world to fight for the world with the devil. Ajumenha, who was working late into the night, started complaining about Takahashi Makoto because the current progress of the manga was not as expected by Landai, who finished half of it in half a month. The completed manga now, the number of manuscripts is only less than 1/3 of Landai's expectation. Although Ajumenha needs to complete 3 manga manuscripts now, they can only be counted as 2 comics. After all, PCP is only the content of a monthly magazine and a weekly magazine, so the difference is not very big. But even so, Ajumenha still felt that there was not enough time. Landai had already begun to think about whether to enter the sleepless mode in the next half-month in order to complete the comic manuscript within the deadline. Ahem, you're so angry that you can transform into a Saiyan. Don't have such delusions, Landai, you're just a mortal. The 3 assistants of Ajumenha did not join in the complaint at this moment, because they could not stop the work at hand, so how could they have the thought to join the good friends in complaining about other cartoonists? As long as you survive this month, the rest of the time will be much easier. Although Landai was telling the truth, it sounded like he was escaping from reality. Hey, the best. Have you ever felt that that guy Aiken seems to be too quiet recently? So quiet that it makes me feel a little uncomfortable. Looking at the puzzled look on his good friend's face, the yellow-haired glasses gentleman put down his eyes. With the comic manuscript in his hand, he pushed up his glasses and said, based on Aiken's character, it's hard to imagine that he hasn't been serialized in a weekly. What you said is indeed a bit surprising, but... Landai did not stop painting. he just raised his head and fired the dead fish eye's contempt ray at his good friend. Akito, is this the time to talk about this? The most important thing right now is to complete the manga manuscript. Hey. Well, enough rest, let's continue working. A moment of rest is not enough for the yellow-haired glasses guy, but now is not the time to rest like a spoiled brat. As for what Makoto Takahashi wants to do, the yellow-haired glasses man is not willing to think about it. As a good friend said, the most important thing now is of course to complete his manga manuscript first. Compared with the miserable life of Kyajo Kimomeha, it is much easier for Eiji Niizuma, who only needs to complete the Zombie Gun manga. Without the burden of monthly serialization, new comics are still serialized in a weekly format. With Eiji Niizuma's ability, of course there is no need to enter the frantic rhythm of rushing manuscripts like Ajuma Menha. Even Eiji Niizuma still has the thought and time. View sample issues of weekly and monthly magazines. Arizuma-kun, this is the monthly magazine you asked for. The editor Yujiro, who came to collect manga manuscripts, handed over the monthly magazine Arima Eiji requested. Oh. Yujiro-san, said gratefully, like a child receiving a gift. Niizuma Eiji grabbed the monthly magazine with a face full of joy, squatted on a chair and read, "The manga manuscript of Zombie Gun over there." Eh? Have you finished so much? Looking at the manga manuscript on the table, Yujiro frowned in surprise. Although it is a good thing to finish it ahead of schedule, but Shinzuma-kun, as a weekly serialized manga, I still recommend you not to do this. After all, completing the manga manuscript in advance means limiting the development of the manga. Once the content is not accepted by readers, the ranking of the following chapters will drop. Hey, Shinzuma-kun. Are you listening to me? As expected of the Phoenix Academy teacher, this content is so touching, he didn't hear what Yujiro said at all. Eiji, the new wife, was already immersed in the comics. Just like Yoshida felt a deep sense of powerlessness when facing Makoto Takahashi, Yujiro was also suppressed in all aspects when facing his new wife Eiji. Just like the internal rumor on the editor's side, the most troublesome cartoonist is the Chuyonibu of the Phoenix Institute Murasaki, and the most helpless cartoonist is the childish guy Niizuma Eiji. Seeing his new wife, Eiji, immersed in comics, Yujiro naturally did not ask for boredom and continued talking to himself. Instead, he picked up the comic manuscript, sat on the sofa, and started to look through his own manga manuscript. Although like Takahashi Makoto, Niizuma Eiji is too childish in character and it is indeed difficult to communicate sometimes, but when it comes to comics, he will be surprisingly serious. Huh? This content is... Looking through the manga manuscript, Yujiro discovered the content of this chapter and unfolded it somewhat unexpectedly. It's really bold to choose to do this. But is there really no problem? Yujiro-san, do you have any questions? Eiji, the new wife who had finished reading the manga, stood in front of Yujiro at some point and looked at his editor seriously. It seemed that he had heard Yujiro's whispered comments before. Shinzuma-kun, the original villain is obviously a very popular character, but why did you think of replacing it with a new villain in this chapter? In Wangdao comics, villains are very important. Existence. So to replace it casually like Eiji Niizuma, although you should trust the cartoonist's control ability, but this is still a bit difficult for Yujiro to accept. Because I can't win, teacher Ajuma Menha is a very powerful opponent. Niizuma Eiji suddenly pulled out a sample magazine of Shounen Jump previously released from the table, which had Aju on it. The issue of Kamamha's Reversi short story. Yujiro-san, are you an idiot? If you don't make changes to Zombie Gun and continue to draw it like this, you will be surpassed. It shouldn't be possible, right? Although I have always known the accuracy of Eiji Niizuma's comic predictions, it was still a little hard to accept when he actually faced it. After Yujiro was silent for a moment, he began to make various excuses as if to comfort him. I heard Hattori say that the current Ajumumenha has too many manga manuscripts to complete and is almost overwhelmed. It's pretty good to finish the comic within the deadline, so, should. Humph. Teacher Kimiha Aju will definitely be able to complete the manga. Opening the sketchbook of his storyboard, Eiji Nyaizuma covered half of his face, pointed at half of the face in the painting, and said Tsuyujiro shouted loudly, Mashiro-sensei can definitely do it. Because his eyes are just like the protagonist in a shonen manga, burning with unyielding fighting spirit. Although I don't know how many times I have heard Eiji Nitsuma say such words, Yujiro is still a little hard to understand. However, as usual, Yujiro would not argue with Eiji Nyaizuma. As before, he wisely chose to change the subject. Hey, Nyaizuma-kun, do you know what the future dual plan of the Phoenix Academy is about? I don't know how. It prevents you from reading animations and comics, but as for games, it's absolutely prohibited. Ugh. Yuichiro is so stingy. Eiji, the new wife, curled her lips in dissatisfaction and rolled around on the ground like a child. I heard it was a very interesting game. Hey, you're a cartoonist. Just let me draw cartoons in peace. Yujiro's mouth twitched a little, and he looked helplessly at the monthly magazine spread out on the table. Speaking of which, the Phoenix Academy is really vicious, and it's not doing its job properly. There should be a limit. There is so much time and energy for games, animations, and comics, why not draw more comics? Yujiro-san, I'll leave the manga manuscript to you. Next, I have something I need to confirm. After hearing Yujiro's casual complaint, Nyaizuma Eiji suddenly remembered something, and the expression on his face became serious. And issued an eviction order to Yujiro without any courtesy. Wait, Shinzuma-kun. What happened? Yujiro was confused. Before he could ask anything, he was successfully expelled by Shinzuma Eiji and locked out. Hey, Phoenix Academy teacher. Nyaizuma Eiji stood on the back of the chair, his body swaying as the chair rocked, but his hand was holding the phone tightly, with a serious look on his face. About you, teacher. Future showdown plan, there is something that worries me a lot. Oh, Black Flame King, it seems you have already discovered it. Takahashi Makoto did not hide it at all, and there was no surprise in his tone. Just as I expected before, the first person to realize the truth of this plan was you. The so-called future showdown plan, the existence of the plan to decide the winner as an opponent, refers to the three of comics, games, and animation, right? After hesitating for a moment, Nizuma Eiji showed a trace of solemnity on his face. In other words, Mr. Fengguangai Yuan, you think that the previous monster era has completely defeated us, and before there are no new opponents, you choose to use yourself as an opponent for this duel. Tisk. Black Flame King, the game of small fights should have ended long ago. Without denying or admitting, Takahashi Makoto just complained unhappily. As the stage for the final battle, although Devil's monologue and so on, I am also looking forward to it, but if the performance can have your cooperation, then the gorgeousness and fashion will be greatly improved. Increase. So, as expected, if Mr. Ahomumaha is my best opponent, then Mr. Hawinkuma, you are my last enemy. So King of Black Flame, quickly finish the fateful duel with your good friend Ahomumaha, and then. On the other end of the phone, Takahashi Makoto showed a look of expectation on his face. Then, step onto the stage of the final battle and show the world and all mankind the final style of our king. Understood. I am also looking forward to it. But Mr. Howin. Clannad is really interesting. Hee, of course. But King of Black Flame, as a reward for being the first to discover the truth, I have specially prepared a gift for you. It is called The Correct Way to Watch Clannad / A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 295. Although at the beginning, the first episode of Eiji Nizuma's Zombie Gun lived up to expectations and took the first place, but then Akira Mumha's Reversi began to dominate and snatched the first place from Eiji Nizuma for 3 consecutive weeks. In this month, the top 2 were produced by these 2 comics, and in the next month, these 2 comics also alternated in the first place. Now the competition in Shonen Jump is super fierce. Oh, so, as expected. Hey, Aiken, your reaction is too bland, isn't it? After complaining instinctively, Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto with some confusion. Wait, as expected means. Huh. Next, the Black Flame King should overtake, but this is only a temporary phenomenon. After that, Akira Mumha's good friends will mobilize the power of their friends, start to enter the protagonist mode, and start the battle plan of a big comeback. Then after some unknown riots, a certain blue-headed dream will come true, which is a cause for celebration. Makoto Takahashi used a very normal tone to talk about the future development that shocked Yoshida, while lowering his head and carefully drawing the manga clannad. Well, the situation is basically like this. You are lying, right? Let's not talk about whether such a situation will occur in the future. Even if it does occur, why do you know it? Seeing Makoto Takahashi put on a face that mocked mortal wisdom, Yoshida decisively completed his self-salvation in his mind, and made a self-complaint before Makoto Takahashi. Hey, I know, it must be great prophecy or peeping into the world line or something. Your Majesty the Great Demon King is mighty. Yoshida, have you been raised by Makoto Takahashi, to be a species that does not know what shame and moral integrity are? Oh, by the way, Chen, I have a question for you, about the manga clannad. Picking up the manga manuscript on the table and preparing to read it as usual, Yoshida suddenly remembered what he had always wanted to ask. Is this manga about the Crystal Palace? Huh? Looking at Yoshida in confusion, Takahashi Cheng squinted his right eye and pondered for a moment, then showed a contemptuous smile on his face. My beloved cat, because in the 2 episodes serialized in the past 2 months, several cute girls suddenly appeared around Okazaki Tomoya, so you have such an illusion? Has your brain been replaced by white turbid liquid? Has the resentment of a single pervert for more than 30 years broken through the scope of the inherent barrier and completely eroded the real world? It's really pitiful. We are discussing the issue of comics now. Yoshida did not deny someone's sharp remarks, but spent 90% of his body's strength to suppress his anger. The Fujibayashi sisters, Nagisa Furukawa, Tomoyo Sakegamai, and Kotomi Ichinos, although it's only a monthly series, if there are so many female characters at the beginning, how will the story unfold? Takahashi Makoto did not respond immediately to Yoshida's complaining question, but continued to complete the comic draft. When Yoshida was almost impatient, he raised his head and added Yoshida's words. Well, my cat, it seems that you missed a few people. Dormitory supervisor Missy Sagara, Fuko Ibuki. Oh, it seems that you haven't watched the later plot yet. What spoilers are the rhythm of the cremation of the whole family? I won't say anything, anyway, you can read the rest by yourself. That's not what I want to talk about. Oh, forget it. Yoshida got angry and took out the monthly magazine from his bag. He turned to the chapter that had troubled him and complained to Takahashi Makoto with a gloomy face. Although other readers who read this chapter didn't hear the song like us, but Makoto, you should know that the content of this chapter caused the monthly magazine sales to soar. The reason for the increase in sales is said to be that the comics suddenly changed from joyful to tearful, so many girls called and cried to complain. Tisk, I get angry when I talk about this. Why is Shonen Jump so popular? Editor, and also have to endure the complaints of the monthly editor? Hearing Yoshida's complaints, Takahashi Makoto showed a look of compassion on his face, sighed for a long time, and shook his head helplessly. Alas, it turns out that the humans in this world are all ultimate M-suckers. It's just a little sad plot, but it can actually increase the sales of the monthly magazine when being abused. Is this world really beyond salvation? It seems that there is no need to wait for the high-energy ending to come out. The humans in this world will self-destruct because of excessive sadness, even the killer I have prepared for a long time is not needed. High energy ending? I think it will be tortured to death. It's a story about people. Yoshida successfully displayed the skill of making sharp screams without the help of any props, and he completely defeated a certain elementary school student, especially when he saw Takahashi Makoto's matter-of-fact look. Yoshida's mouth began to twitch constantly. Hey, Aiken, please spare me. Let's not talk about what your so-called high-energy ending will be. According to my understanding of you, you let us listen to that music before, and you definitely plan to sell it as a bonus when the monthly magazine is published later. As long as the tear-jerking plot similar to the one between Furukawa Nagisa and Okazaki Tomoya appears again, and it is accompanied by that brutal song, the consequences will definitely be humanity will realize the sublimation of the soul and obtain the final salvation. Makoto Takahashi gave a thumbs up, with an expression of "this is what I expected," and looked at Yoshida with a smile. Yes, human beings will, if that happens, then the monthly magazine that has finally improved thanks to the efforts of the editor-in-chief will definitely be pushed into an abyss that cannot be saved. And I will be tortured crazy by the editors of the monthly magazine. I don't want to be called and complained all night long by those resentful guys. Speaking of Yoshida, in fact, any monthly magazine is good. What you are really worried about is the latter one, right? My beloved cat, rest assured, just one song is not enough. No, just using one song as a gift, you are too underestimated, His Majesty, the fierce demon king of the Phoenix Academy, aren't you? Takahashi Makoto, who almost spoke his true feelings, immediately used the magical skill of changing the topic under Yoshida's doubtful eyes. While Rin and Seiji are practicing in their hometown during this period, I want to complete it with the witch, the duo that destroys mankind. Drink, ha 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 ha. That leak just now was definitely intentional. Yoshida's beast-like intuition has once again felt an ominous premonition. Moreover, when it comes to destroying humanity. Makoto Takahashi, when will you give up this impossible obsession? Stare. Eiji Nyaizuma curled up on the chair, staring at the monthly magazine in his hand with an extremely serious expression, while Yujiro, who came to collect the manga manuscript, pretended to ignore it and read the manga manuscript on his own. It's just that compared to Yoshida, Yujiro obviously doesn't have enough training. At least Yoshida can ignore Takahashi Makoto's various weird words and deeds and devote himself to the manga manuscript, while Yujiro, while reading the manga manuscript, he also carefully peeking at the new wife Eiji. Unable to concentrate and devote himself wholeheartedly to the manga manuscript, this is why Yoshida has become the squad leader before, and Yujiro is still the general editor. Although Yujiro has now become the squad leader, the high-end skill of multitasking is not so easy to master. Oh my, as expected from the Phoenix Academy teacher. Eiji Shinzuma suddenly put down the manga manuscript and let out a sigh that made Yujiro confused. The content of the next few chapters of the monthly magazine is really exciting, but are you looking forward to? Yujiro looked at Nyaizuma Eiji in confusion, scratched his head in confusion, picked up the monthly magazine on the table, and asked with a troubled face, "Hey, Nyaizuma-kun, but what?" The pouting new wife Eiji, as usual, jumped down from the chair and curled up in a circle, like a wronged child. The next development will be too sad, but it will affect my mood for drawing comics, but I couldn't help but want to see it. Eh? The development of sadness? Are you talking about Clannad? Yujiro reacted very quickly this time, with a look of disbelief on his face. I said, Shinzuma-kun, why do you say that the next plot will enter tragedy? What about Xiangzankan? The male protagonist is scheming and teasing the male co-star. The content of the 3 episodes so far has been very enjoyable. Eiji Nyaizuma, who had stopped practicing his cuteness skills, looked at his editor up and down, and nodded with sympathy. Yujiro-san is such an idiot. Can't you see this? Yes, I understand, as expected. It's just like what Phoenix-Sin Sensei said in the manga, Yuichiro-san, your whole existence lacks the so-called love. Although my mother and teachers taught me tirelessly when I was young, saying that when you encounter something you don't understand, you need to abandon all timidity and shyness and only keep pure curiosity, but, at this moment, Yuichiro really wants to find a time machine and go back in time to educate his younger self. The spirit of ask if you don't understand that I mentioned before is only applicable when communicating with normal humans. When facing abnormal humans, such as Makoto Takahashi, Eiji Arizuma, etc., it is absolutely forbidden to use this trick. Ah, I just lack love, I am single, I am destined to be alone all my life. It seems that because of the words of his new wife Eiji, he accidentally touched some sad past events, and the editor Yujiro entered a state of self-destruction. Yujiro-san, you are really a strange person, Eiji Shinzuma continued to hit. Whether it's Makoto Takahashi or Eiji Arizuma, these two guys are definitely the worst character cartoonists, bar none. Yujiro, whose face was already covered in black energy, thought like this. I say, Shinzuma-kun, he no longer explodes in ridicule, but dies in complaints, so Yuichiro, your anger level is full, and it's time to fight back. Moxie Moxie, His Majesty the Great Demon King of the Phoenix Academy, this is what the King of Black Flame said, completely ignoring that Yuichiro was on the verge of an explosion. His new wife Eiji answered the phone as if nothing had happened. Well, anyone who has seen it said, so what's next? Really? I'm looking forward to it. Is it a lie? How could human eyes reflect such shining light? Looking at Eiji Shinzuma's eyes sparkling with an expectant look on his face, Yujiro became a little calm. By the way, is the person who just called me from the comic book Phoenix Institute Murderous Realm? What on earth was said? Yujiro was about to say something, but he saw Nazuma Eiji's gesture to keep quiet. Seeing Nazuma Eiji take a deep breath, then connect the phone to the speaker, with an expectant look on his face, Yujiro seemed to understand what was going to happen next. Ahem, I estimate that my handwriting will be broken in the exam tomorrow afternoon. So I will post another chapter today while I am still healthy. Sorry, I thought I couldn't update tonight. It was a mistake. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 296. The clear sound of the piano sounded. It was not some exciting music, nor was it a particularly complex melody, but Twanzi, 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 Twanzi family. The male voice that began to sing did not sound like a very professional singer. Although Eiji Niizuma and Yujiro could tell that this was Makoto Takahashi's voice, it was immediately out of place when compared to the tone of a certain Chuyunibu before. Dumpling, 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 dumpling family. The female voice that joined in the middle sounded much more professional than the previous male voice. However, the woman who sang did not deliberately show off her singing skills. Instead, it sounded more like a cappella before coaxing a child to sleep, which made people feel warm and full of healing. Although as a time traveler, although he had a cheat code like brain search engine, although his force and physical strength were judged to be out of specification, although he had the combat power of a top chef, and although he claimed to be the Mad Demon King, His Majesty Fengguangai Yuan Kuma, but Makoto Takahashi did not choose the evolution method of a certain Aotian after all, so it is estimated that the heaven-defying technique of decathlon was not mastered by a certain Chuyunibu. White coat cartoonist. Therefore, in terms of comprehensiveness of ability, not to mention compared to some descendants of the Aotian school, even Sebastian, the all-purpose butler, is much stronger than Takahashi Makoto. I just want to say one thing, Takahashi Makoto's singing level can only be regarded as amateur level, at least compared to the very talented which, the gap is not a little bit. So don't expect that Takahashi Makoto will be able to activate a certain AOT and halo as soon as he starts singing, and there will be a scene where the sound of nature lingers for 3 days. Because Takahashi Makoto is just a cartoonist, just the crazy Phoenix Court Kima Great Demon King, that's all. The music is very monotonous, the rhythm is very slow, and the content of the lyrics can only be regarded as average, but such a simple song shocked Nyaizuma Eiji and Yujiro. Behind every song, there is a story hidden. Many songs that can resonate with people, what really makes people feel infinitely, is the story behind the song. For example, the unknown song that Nazuma Eiji and Yujiro are hearing now. How about the Black Flame King? After the music and singing ended, Takahashi Makoto's voice quickly spread in the room through influence. As I said before, this song runs through the soul of the entire Clannad comic. By the way, a friendly reminder, this is also one of the correct ways to watch Clannad, especially after the content of each episode ends. Well, you can just treat it as the end of the comic. Nazuma Eiji and Yujiro both fell silent, not because they were moved in a mysterious way, nor because they were brainwashed by Devil's demonic sound, but simply, after hearing Takahashi Makoto's last friendly reminder, they suddenly felt that their purity was desecrated. Chuyunibu is indeed the terminator of the sad atmosphere, and the harmonious atmosphere is the ultimate enemy, no one else. Although the comics of Clannad have returned to the previous happy daily life with the appearance of a large number of female characters and the improvement of Okazaki Tomoya's black-bellied attribute level in the past 2 months, for some readers with keen intuition or who have obtained the mind's eye skill, this comic is definitely not a simple funny daily comic, nor is it a Crystal Palace comic. The comic Clannad, which has been serialized so far, has left the deepest impression on every reader. Without a doubt, the incident between Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa on a rainy day. Although the plot development is very smooth and no one feels out of place, the sudden appearance of such a great brutality content from the previous happy daily content will really leave a deep impression on people. Whenever talking about something or someone, humans will always subconsciously search for the most profound memory of it in their minds. For example, Nyaizuma Eiji now, for example, the editor Yujiro now. Because the two had discussed about Clannad before, when they heard Makoto Takahashi mention this comic, the first thing they thought of was naturally the most memorable plot, but it was very frustrating that the two people who were recalling the touching plot in the comic were interrupted by Makoto Takahashi's words, causing some of the emotions they had when recalling the content of the comic to disappear without a trace. Oh! Is this the dumpling family that Mr. Howin mentioned before? It's super interesting. Eiji Nyaizuma suddenly jumped up from his seat and shouted excitedly into the phone, Mr. Howin, please be sure to pass me a copy of this song. Thank you very much. Shin, Nyaizuma-kun, pulling Eiji Nyaizuma's sleeve, Yujiro pointed at himself with an embarrassed look, as if he wanted Eiji Nyaizuma to convey to Makoto Takahashi the shameful delusion of listening to it. He did not immediately agree to Eiji Nyaizuma's request, and Makoto Takahashi entered a state of complete silence on the phone. If it weren't for Eiji Nyaizuma and Yujiro, who could hear the occasional piano sound coming from the other end, they would have thought that Makoto Takahashi had ended the call. Just when Eiji Nyaizuma couldn't help but want to speak, Makoto Takahashi suddenly said something in silence, Hey, King of Black Flame, are you interested in playing a game with me? Although Eiji Nyaizuma's personality is a bit too childish, there is still a certain distance between him and Chuyunibu. Sometimes communication is not as smooth as expected. For example, now, although he showed an interested look on his face about Chuyunibu's proposal, Eiji Nyaizuma still asked in a low voice on the phone with some doubt, Games? Teacher Fengguangai Yuan, it sounds like it's very interesting. Hatsuori came to the editorial department early in the morning, and before he had time to take a breath, he saw a magical scene. In the entire office, most of the editorial staff gathered together, and the onlookers exclaimed from time to time, this scene made Hattori feel familiar. Well, It's a bit like when I was in college, a group of people gathered together to watch some not suitable for children. Although that scene was a bit nostalgic, Hattori also knew that the reason why his colleagues gathered together was definitely not to watch something. After all, this is an office. Hattori, full of curiosity, originally planned to walk over and become a shameful spectator to satisfy his curiosity for gossip, but after seeing a piece of paper on the table, he suddenly had a bad idea. Huh? This is... Turning over the paper on the table, Hattori just glanced roughly, and a solemn look immediately gathered on his face. After a long sigh, putting down the statistical table in his hand that recorded the performance of the cartoonist, Hattori immediately saw Yujiro, who closed his eyes and smiled triumphantly, and a trace of unwillingness appeared in his eyes. During this period, due to the number limit of the weekly Shonen Jump and the cartoonist Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma was busy with the serialization of the monthly magazine, Yachin Mumenjai finally ushered in his most glorious period. The new comics of the two good friends are comparable to the comics of the cartoonist Nezuma Eiji, who is called a genius by the editorial department. They were once ahead before, but, this pair of good friends suffered a heavy blow this time. With a strong attitude, the new comic of Eiji Nizuma took the first place, while Aho Mumenjai fell behind to fifth place. And judging from the number of votes, Aho Mumenjai lost miserably this time. Looking at Yujiro's appearance, Hattori was not angry. After all, as colleagues, they have been together for quite a while. Perhaps in other companies, intrigues between employees are everywhere. However, in the editorial department of Shonen Jump, everyone will consciously compete, but will not really calculate each other. People who can enter the editorial department may have different abilities, but at least one thing is the same, that is the love for comics, the love from the heart and the soul. Where there are people, there will naturally be struggles. This is common sense in the world, and the editorial side is also not exempt. But as a responsible editor, if you really do whatever it takes for your own interests and the interests of your cartoonists, then there is no doubt that you are betraying the comics you like and betraying your beliefs. You will not really do things without any bottom line, without any scruples, because you have the so-called faith and the so-called love. You're really good at it, Yujiro. If you lose, you lose, just admit it frankly. Hattori didn't have any anger or complaints, he just looked at Yujiro seriously, his eyes flashing with burning fighting spirit. But next, Yashiro Mumenjai won't lose. Hee. That's a bit hard to say. Yujiro, who was sorting documents with his eyes closed, had a smug smile on his face. After putting down the documents in his hand, he opened his eyes and looked at editor Hattori seriously, his tone full of strong confidence. You know, Nezuma-kun is a real genius. Tisk, looking at the two people who suddenly opened the Fated Enemy small copy, Yoshida, who was sitting on the side and watching coldly, sneered disdainfully and kept typing files on the computer with his fingers, slowly performing a map cannon-style taunt. Genius? Humph, compared with that extraordinary existence of Takahashi Makoto, the Yashiro Mumenjai and Nezuma Eiji you mentioned are all scum with a combat power of only 5. It turns out that Yoshida is the most arrogant existence, our real enemy. In an instant, whether it was Yujiro or Hattori, the two temporarily entered a truce stage. No need for eye contact, no need for spiritual contact, with a synchronization rate that broke through the sky, they simultaneously cast ultimate destruction death ray towards Yoshida. Oh? Don't you believe what I said? Humph, you fools, you'd better take a look at the latest issue of the monthly magazine first. Then you will know what the wisdom of mortals is. Humph. After spending a long time with Tsuyunobu, Yoshida was inevitably affected. Yoshida, who was originally known as a black-bellied and poisonous tongue on the editorial side, has also entered the Super S attribute evolution mode due to the pressure from Makoto Takahashi during this period, judging from the fact that the success rate of the Little Otter's Escape has dropped significantly during this period, and he has been staying at home and drawing endless comics. Yoshida's ability has obviously improved a lot. A new issue of the monthly magazine. Monthly magazine, is it the comic called Clannad? Oh, by the way, everyone is here. Completely ignoring the two people who wanted to fight to their heart's content but now chose to form an alliance, Yoshida stopped his work, looked up and glanced at the editorial department, took out a CD from his backpack, and smiled mysteriously at all the editors. Here's a treat for everyone, this is a music album of Makoto Takahashi and Rina Ogata. Ahem, according to Makoto Takahashi, the songs recorded in it were specially written for Clannad. Do you want to listen to it before work? Looking at the strange smile on Yoshida's face, Yujiro and Hattori naturally noticed something was wrong. By the way, according to Makoto Takahashi, that is, the manga artist Howin-kuma, listening to the songs in the CD while reading the manga, this is the correct way to watch Clannad. Ahem, the Kirin arm that was switched yesterday had a rejection reaction, and then I finished the work that had accumulated some time ago, so a certain cat did not update yesterday, sorry to say. Although I want to take a break after the exam, there is a limit to being spoiled. This is something a certain cat understands, so. A certain sadistic cat is here to join in. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 297. Classmate, what do you want? The owner of the newsstand looked at the boy in uniform in front of him with a smile and asked friendly. Boss, can you give me a? Under the gaze of the newsstand boss, Qin Tian suddenly scratched his head helplessly and laughed awkwardly. Ahaha, I don't know that name. I remember it so much, it was the comic magazine called Clannad that recently serialized comics. The comic strip Clannad, oh. Is it Victory Junk? Regarding Qin Tian's embarrassment, the boss didn't say much, but quickly took down a magazine from the bookshelf and handed it to Qin Tian said, this classmate, you are really lucky. This is the last book. Hey, I've always been lucky. Qin Tian echoed with a narcissistic smile. Only when he took the comic book did he notice what the boss said, with a surprised look on his face and murmuring to himself. Get up, huh? Is it actually must-win junk? And is there only the last copy left? By the way, this must-win junk has become a hot seller now. As a loyal fan of Shounen comics, Qin Tian doesn't like other comic magazines very much except Shounen Jump, a manga magazine for teenagers. Qin Tian also bought a copy of Must Win Jump published by the same magazine as Shounen Jump a long time ago, but it serialized some romance-oriented comics, which made Qin, who has always been addicted to hot-blooded battle-type juvenile comics, God, I am quite speechless. As for why I suddenly thought of buying this monthly magazine today, ultimately, the reason is, I really don't understand, why does that guy Xiaolan recommend me to read this comic? Lying on the bed, holding the unopened monthly magazine in his hand, Qin Tian had a look of disdain on his face. Although it is cartoonist Phoenix Institute's comics are fierce, but that doesn't mean that every step of the cartoonist who likes to wear a white coat is a masterpiece, right? Especially when it is serialized in Junk. Qin Tian's deskmate is a girl named Xiao Yelan, who is also an extreme comic book addict. And more importantly, this girl named Xiao Yelan is the leader who leads Qin Tian into the world of comics. Generally speaking, Qin Tian likes the comics recommended by Xiao Yelan. Especially in the past year, the comic recommended by Xiao Yelan is called Cartoonist Phoenix Academy's Fierce Comics. But Qin Tianzhen couldn't fall in love with this comic called Clannad. Although he knew that this comic was also written by the Cartoonist Phoenix Academy, and had heard Xiao Yelan talk about it before, Qin Tian decisively chose it after learning that the content of this comic was a daily campus comic. Give up? However, when Qin Tian was in class today, he saw his classmate Xiao Yelan wiping away tears and a comic book open in the desk drawer. Speaking of which, I was so impulsive that I actually bought a copy. I'm going to overspend this month's pocket money, oh, forget it. Anyway, Reversi by Ajumu and Zombie by Eiji Shinzuma. I have finished reading Gun, and I have to wait several days to see the new content. Qin Tian held up the monthly magazine in his hand helplessly, and complained with a long sigh, "Now that I bought it, I want to kill the boring time." Then let's take a look. But I'm still a little curious about comics that can make that carefree girl Xiaolan cry. Qin Tian also knew a little bit about the previous content of Clannad, because his deskmate Xiao Yelan had told him many times to recommend this comic. But this is Qin Tian's first time reading this comic. Looking at the comics in this issue of Must Win Junk, Qin Tian was speechless. The male protagonist is Okazaki Tomoya. He is obviously a student, but he looks like a gangster. He hangs around the school all day long and often meets many cute girls. And what makes Qin Tian complain the most is that the way this comic is developed is very much like some games with the theme of capturing cute girls. From a visual inspection of this development, could it be the Crystal Palace strategy comic? That guy Xiaolan actually reads this type of comic. It's really unbelievable. Qin Tian knew that his deskmate what Xiao Yelan hates the most is this kind of Crystal Palace comics with one male protagonist and multiple female protagonists. Although the girls in the comics are indeed very cute, but, what is so touching about this kind of comics? I think the hero Okazaki Tomoya shows off all kinds of sinister things. This content is very funny, it's how I open it up. Not correct. Although the daily content described in the comic has made Qin Tian so bored that he started to complain about himself, Qin Tian has not given up on this comic. Because there was something in the comic that made Qin Tian a little curious, well, it was the legend about the ghost girl in the school. In the private Mitsusaka High School in the manga, there is a legend of a ghost girl spreading. It is said that the female student who was unfortunately involved in a car accident when she entered the first grade. Although it is said that she is still lying in the hospital receiving treatment, many people in the school have witnessed this girl, alone in the old school building all day long. In the empty classroom, something is being carved silently, and mysterious star-like objects are sent out to people who come to talk. In order to help Nagisa Furukawa complete the task of rebuilding the drama club, Tomoya Okazaki and Nagisa Furukawa were busy in school, trying to attract their friends into the drama club, and in the process, something about the legend of the mysterious ghost girl spread to the ears of Okazaki Tomoya again and again through the exchanges between passers-by and classmates. Okazaki Tomoya brought Furukawa Nagisa to the classroom where Fuko was, intending to invite Fuko to join the drama club, but Fuko refused. During the conversation, Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa learned from Fuko that the reason why Fuko was silently carving starfish alone in the classroom was because Fuko wanted to use the wooden starfish as a gift to invite Kosaka High School teachers and students to attend the wedding of her sister, Mr. Ibuki, who used to be a teacher in this school. The content of this chapter, the first half of it, is basically this: the calm daily plot, although it is interspersed with various funny scenes, but it still makes Qin Tian, who is used to reading shonen comics, feel more and more boring. Although in the comic, the conversation between Fengzi and Okazaki Tomoya is quite interesting. Okazaki Tomoya plays tricks on Fengzi in various ways, which makes Qin Tian find the content of the comic very funny, but Qin Tian has not forgotten the content that concerns him. Although Qin Tian had already guessed at this moment that the ghost girl mentioned by passers-by was the girl Ibuki Fuko who carved the starfish, but... by the way, how is this a ghost girl? She's obviously a cute loli. Qin Tian is completely unable to complain. Judging from the content he has watched so far, Fengzi is obviously just a childish girl. And from the conversations between several people in the comic, Qin Tian also understood the reason why Fengzi worked so hard to carve starfish, and he felt a little bad. Fengzi stayed in the classroom carving starfish and so on, and was mistaken for a ghost girl. The strange worldview of the passerby students in the comic made Qin Tian almost want to give up the comic. Is a manga of this caliber really the murderous manga from the Phoenix Institute? Compared with the previous comics, it seems to be too far behind, right? Qin Tian, who was confused, did not continue reading. Instead, he turned to the monthly serialization of Clannad. After rubbing his eyes vigorously, he confirmed that he had not read it wrong. The name written in the author column was indeed Phoenix. There is no doubt that the hospital is really evil. Putting down the comic, Qin Tian complained feebly, speaking of how ferocious the Phoenix Academy is. Why did you suddenly think of serializing such boring comics in a monthly magazine? It's a waste of time to serialize such comics in a monthly magazine. Sure enough, Phoenix Yin Zhen should go back to Shonen Jump to draw Shonen comics. This is the most correct choice. After complaining, Qin Tian decided to read the content of this chapter. Although Qin Tian had already decided in his heart that after reading this chapter, he would never spend money to buy Must-Win Jump, however, the comic continues the development that followed surprised Qin Tian. First, Nagisa Furukawa whispered to Tomoya Okazaki that the girl named Fuko was exactly the girl who was rumored by her classmates to have suffered a car accident on the first day of school. Then the two of them, who were doubtful, visited Fuko again. My sister, Mr. Ibuki, learned that Fuko is still unconscious in the hospital. Qin Tian was a little surprised by the super expansion in the comics. Judging from the previous content, this comic called Clannad should be a comic about the daily life of the academy. How could there be a ghost-like existence? Although at the beginning, Qin Tian always believed that the character Fengzi was a real girl, and those rumors were only caused by Fengzi's childish character and weird behavior, but now after seeing the comic, after confirming it through various inquiries from Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa, Qin Tian also began to feel that something was not right about the existence of Fengzi, a girl. By the way, this Fengzi is really a ghost, right? Is this comic not just a daily comic, but a supernatural monster comic? The reason why I didn't have this idea in the first place, is it that I opened it incorrectly. Classmate Qin Tian was a little curious and wanted to see the next development of the comic, but found that the content of this chapter ended here, and he suddenly felt like crying without tears. Although I have become accustomed to the brutal abilities of the manga artist Shoin's murderous plots, this time is different, because this time it is serialized in the publication Clannad, but Music Victory Junk is a monthly magazine that is released once a month. There should be a preview for the next issue. Why didn't I see it? I must have opened it the wrong way. Unwilling to give up, classmate Qin Tian quickly flipped through this monthly magazine. Although he accidentally discovered PCP by Ajuma Menha, his excitement was instantly shattered because he was eager to know the follow-up content of Clannad Got It. However, the result was no surprise. In the entire monthly magazine, the content about Clannad never appeared again. So, Qin Tian and everyone on the reader's side, wait for the release of Must-Win Jump next month with peace of mind. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do SD Email. Chapter 298. Although the editors of the monthly magazine began to complain, many readers have called the monthly magazine by Sheng Jump to ask why the plot of Clannad suddenly changed from an everyday school comic to a supernatural comic, but the commander-in-chief, who can emit death flash through his glasses, is naturally very clear about the hidden purpose of the readers hoping to see the content of the next chapter as soon as possible. The fact is just as the commander-in-chief expected. Most of the readers who called to inquire complained about the content of the comic on the surface, but what they really care about is what the content of the next chapter is, how the comic will unfold, etc. According to Makoto Takahashi, this is just a group tsundere incident on the reader's side. As a monthly publication, the content of one episode of Clannad is enough compared to a weekly publication, but this level still cannot satisfy the readers, especially with the assistance of Makoto Takahashi's master-level cruel card plot ability. The editorial department of the monthly magazine is completely busy. Although the editorial department had been used to the idleness of the office due to the poor sales of Jump before the commander took office, The editorial department has been busy since the serialization of Clannad in the monthly magazine. Not only has the number of readers calling gradually increased, but the number of letters has also gradually increased. At least the number of letters received in one day is enough to match the number of letters received in a week before. Moreover, in order to cooperate with Makoto Takahashi's future showdown plan, both the game and the animation being played have started an infinite brainless loop mode, spreading the future showdown plan over and over again to all humans who come into contact with it. At the beginning of each season of the animation, this plan will be deliberately emphasized. The game will also mention this plan at the beginning and end, even with the tacit approval of the commander. The part about Clannad in the monthly magazine will also specifically mention this plan. Google searched "can." What? It's not time yet. What's the matter with this statement? Yoshida was extremely surprised by Makoto Takahashi's decision. Holding the CD with the relevant tracks of Clannad tightly in his hand, Yoshida did not understand Takahashi Makoto's approach at all. "Aiken, didn't you say before that the correct way to watch Clannad is? So, my cat, now is not the time." Takahashi Makoto glared at Yoshida with some displeasure, and slowly sorted out the comic manuscript. "You have read the content of this episode, right? So you should understand that now is not the time for this killer to appear." But before. Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto with an embarrassed face, with a flattering smile on his face, and smiled awkwardly. "Hey, Chang, didn't you ask me to bring the trial version to the editorial department for everyone to listen to? Want to try it? Why don't you want to sell it as a free gift now? You were the one who proposed this suggestion at the beginning, and you were the one who finally won this right from the editor-in-chief, but now. My beloved cat, comics are actually the same as reality. Only after experiencing the ups and downs of life, humans will cherish and remember everything in it forever. If you want to achieve a shocking effect for a while and concentrate everything in a certain period of time, then both reality and comics will flash by like a meteor." Although Takahashi Makoto put on an unfathomable look, in Yoshida's impression, it was just a serious nonsense. "So, my beloved cat, who is still hovering at the level of mortal wisdom, do you understand now? Under your gaze of dare to say I don't understand, I will kill you. Do I dare to say I don't understand?" Yoshida, who didn't dare to speak his true feelings, decisively chose to remain silent to indicate his acquiescence to this shameless behavior. Then this. Shaking the disc in his hand, Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto with a depressed face and asked carefully, "Aiken, when do you think it is most appropriate to appear? Although I also hope that this great cruelty can be released earlier, but let's wait for a while. After all, the twisted resentment and curse of mankind, like dessert after a meal, need to be savored slowly and carefully." Takahashi Makoto's eyes shifted from the disc in Yoshida's hand to the comic manuscript on the table, and an expectant look appeared on his face. "Although that's what I said, the specific situation still needs to be understood after specific tests." "Huh? Test? Hey, Aiken, what are you planning to make famous again?" As expected, because he was too familiar with Takahashi Makoto, after casually revealing a little information, Yoshida vaguely guessed Takahashi Makoto's thoughts. Just looking at Takahashi Makoto's mysterious devilish smile, Yoshida helplessly spread his hands. "Hey, I know, it's a forbidden matter, or if you want to know, you must pay the price of your life, right? Oh, God, why did you leave me?" St. George's Sanctuary. Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida in astonishment, and out of some instinct, he slapped Yoshida's head directly, and roared loudly, "Don't even think about activating this skill in front of me." Takahashi Makoto can use other people's emotions as chance to activate the technique. There is no doubt that your second-year disease has been thoroughly rooted in your bones. After sending the melancholy and depressed Yoshida away, Takahashi Makoto did not enter the cartoonist mode, but took out 2 wine glasses, because today in addition to Yoshida, there was another person from afar who came to meet His Majesty the Demon King. Visitors. Partner, although judging from the current situation, the future showdown plan is relatively successful, however. Takahashi Cheng squinted his eyes and stared at the pale Jing Zonghao opposite him, slapping his hands violently. The table entered a roaring state. What's going on with you now, looking like you've been cursed with aging? Could it be that the organization has broken the covenant and taken action against you? Is this a mental attack or soul attack, curse? I think it's a mental attack, probably. A bitter smile appeared on Jing Zonghao's face. He lifted the wine on the table and drank it all in one gulp. His expression was a little dazed, and the confusion in his eyes flashed away. Speaking of which, Your Majesty, the fierce Demon King of the Phoenix Academy, has summoned you today. What are your instructions? Originally, I wanted to tell you about the second phase of the future duel plan, but... Taking a sip of the wine in the glass, Takahashi Makoto showed a strange smile on his face, but because of the discovery there are more interesting things, so I won't talk about them today. The struggling and twisted human beings, the wavering will end, haha, humans are indeed a very interesting species, and they can really please this Demon King. I knew that nothing could be hidden from you. If it were the old Jing Zonghao, he would definitely act like an orts, and then activate the outbreak mode of Dragon's reverse scale, and face this evil comic who specializes in picking up scars. There was a big fight at home, but now, Jing Zonghao just filled up his wine glass depressedly, and sighed with a wry smile. Pretend is just disguise after all, and my inner state is still not as good as yours. Of course, seeing Jing Zonghao lowering his head in frustration, Takahashi Cheng put down his cup and said angrily, "Is this okay? Are you going to give up everything like this? The spirit of revenge in your body has already. I'm crying. Man. Everything doesn't matter anyway." After sighing with melancholy, Jing Zonghao seemed to have suddenly turned on the memory killing mode, holding up his wine glass with a dull look on his face. Unlike Jing Zonghao Jisang, who was in a daze, Takahashi Makoto looked at the wine glass in his hand with a smile on his face and did not say anything. Suddenly, the two people who were chatting happily before fell into an unusual silence. "Well, Your Respected Majesty the fierce Demon King of the Phoenix Academy, when are we going to start implementing the second phase of the future duel plan?" The one who suddenly spoke to break the silence was Jing Zhonghaji, who had escaped from the memory killing. Mulberry. After all, the expression on the face of a certain second grader had a tendency to gradually collapse, and his unscrupulous laughter made Jisang, who was immersed in memories, instinctively feel a chill. At least until you get rid of the mental burden. Makoto Takahashi squinted his right eye, stared at Jing Zonghao Jisang, and kindly comforted him. As an ally, when facing difficulties, it is best to provide help. Of course, although you still haven't begged me, you can provide me with some high-quality solutions for free this time, such as killing people and silencing them, destroying corpses and destroying traces, and throwing corpses under the sea. Of course, in order to vent Jisang's words, the resentment in my heart, if I simply feel that this level is not enough, and I plan to launch a large-scale attack and kill tens of thousands of people, I think we can establish a long-term cooperative relationship and let humans experience the so-called love and healing together. What, it is indeed a very loving thing. He also said, "Is the smiling Chuyunibu in front of me really just a cartoonist? But no matter how I look at it, I think he should be the leader of a criminal organization. No, no need. Let's talk about the next plan first." "What about the next plan?" Jing Zonghao smiled slyly and tried to change the subject. "After all, according to your previous declaration, the entire future after the duel plan is fully carried out, it will be enough to use it to retaliate against humans. Is this enough to take revenge on humans?" "Hey, Minotaur Jisang, your consciousness is far from perfect." Makoto Takahashi curled his lips in disdain, with a fanatical look on his face. According to the records in the Holy Code, crying represents human sadness, wanting to cry without tears represents human despair, and being sad and heartbroken represents human destruction. The so-called future showdown plan is only the first step recorded in the Holy Code. That's it. Didn't I say that the human will struggling in sorrow and despair is the best dessert that can please my soul? Although he knew what Makoto Takahashi's character was like, it wasn't until today that Jingzonghao Jisang had a correct understanding of Takahashi Makoto's Chuyunibu. Compared with his own disguise to escape reality, the man in a white coat in front of him has truly entered a hopeless state. By the way, how did the Chuyunibu patient in front of me come up with this twisted worldview that enslaves and tortures human beings for fun? Now, Minotaur Jisang, I know what you want to ask. The purpose of the birth of this world is to please me. All humans are my toys, and they are just tributes that make my soul happy. Gao Qiaocheng drank the wine in the glass with a furious look, stepped on the table, and issued a confident and arrogant declaration, because my name is Phoenix Academy Fierce, and I am the arrogant Demon King. Do you understand? I understand. This is no longer a question of understanding or not. Jingzonghao and Ji Sang are instinctively roaring, leaving this dangerous existence as soon as possible, away from this room full of Chuyuni madness. Also, I'll take my leave first. Tisk. Isn't it enough to realize it? That Ji Sang, when will he find out? Squinting his eyes and watching the backs of Jingzonghao and Ji Sang leaving, Takahashi Makoto's face, which was just full of madness, showed a solemn look. After a long time, Takahashi Makoto sighed helplessly, but forget it, maybe now all I can say to Ji Sang is, El Saikongruo. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 299. The monthly magazine is released for 1 month, which doesn't sound very long, but for readers who are waiting for updates, the torment of waiting for 1 month is comparable to the torture of the purgatory world. How great it would be if the magazine that serializes Clannad was a weekly magazine instead of a monthly magazine. Of course, this is just the fantasy of readers who like Clannad. After all, Shonen Jump, which is a mainstream of boys' comics, is unlikely to serialize comics like Clannad, knowing that it is impossible to happen, but always holding on to this fantasy. It must be said that this kind of boring delusion is also one of the derivatives of human greed. Because of the expectations of readers, it is natural that the sales of the monthly magazine must when Jump have increased. Of course, the monthly sales volume is not what readers care about, but how the comic will unfold in this episode. Will it continue the rhythm of the daily campus comic, or will it enter a super expanded plot through the ghost girl Fuko? Ibuki Fuko, the girl who always replaces I with Fuko when speaking, should still be lying in the hospital according to the previous setting of the comic, but in the content of the comic, she appeared in front of everyone. Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa noticed that Fuko's identity was a little unusual, and the two decided to take Fuko back to the Furukawa family. Furukawa Nagisa's parents, Furukawa Akio and Furukawa Sani, run a bakery together. Of course, the customers mainly buy bread made by Akio, and Sani's unique flavor bread is often sold out. And every time Akio always criticizes Sani's bread unconsciously, the result is to trigger Sani's switch. Once Sani's my bread is a burden to the Furukawa family is triggered, Sani, who is already a mother, will cover her face and burst into tears. Whenever Sani cried and ran out, Akio would comfort her by stuffing Sani bread into her mouth, then shouting I love Sani bread the most and chasing after Sani. Since the serialization of Clannad, this plot has appeared in almost every episode, which makes readers feel interesting, but also causes some complaints, saying that a certain cartoonist is dragging the plot. But one thing that cannot be denied is that whether it is Sani who can make strange bread, or Akio who always has a cigarette in his mouth and looks like a bad uncle, They are all kind-hearted people. Throughout the entire Clannad comics, the most warm, loving, and interesting family is undoubtedly the Furukawa family. Although there is not much serialized content now, the Furukawa family has left a very deep impression on readers. For Fuko, whose identity is full of all kinds of weird information, the Furukawa family did not ask too much, and accepted this girl who likes to bicker with Okazaki Tomoya. Especially after learning that Fuko wanted to use the carved wooden starfish as a gift to invite all the students in the school to attend her sister's wedding, the Furukawa family also enthusiastically joined the wooden starfish carving army. With the help of the Furukawa family, Fuko harvested a large number of starfish wood carvings, and took her servants Furukawa Nagisa and Okazaki Tomoya to start the wooden starfish distribution journey in the school. Halfway through, because Fuko was hugged by Furukawa Nagisa when she was bickering with Okazaki Tomoya, she fell into an obsessive fantasy mode, so Okazaki Tomoya took the opportunity to use his class leader Fujibayashi Ryu to play a prank on Fuko and successfully completed the pinnacle achievement of stealing beams and pillars during the conversation. Although the readers on the side really want to know the cause and effect of Fuko's affairs, the comics did not spend too much content to mention this issue. Although the readers on the side can understand that the problem about Fuko will definitely unfold with the development of the plot, but looking at this kind of dragging development in the comics, it will still be resentful. However, as the comic unfolds, the resentment in the readers' hearts is gradually soothed by the behavior of a girl. Holding the carved starfish, Fengzi will give the starfish to everyone who passes by, and invite those who receive the starfish to come to attend her sister Ibuki's wedding. Fengzi's figure working hard for her sister, not to mention the passers-by in the comics, even many readers are moved by her. However, not everyone will accept Fengzi's gift and agree to attend Ibuki's wedding. A gift for you, and I hope you can attend Fengzi's wedding. Fengzi respectfully presented the wooden starfish to her former classmate Mitsui, the glasses girl, and also invited the glasses girl to attend her sister's wedding. I'm very sorry, I can't accept it. Unlike other passers-by, although full of doubts, she still accepted Fengzi's starfish. This glasses girl named Mitsui unceremoniously rejected Fengzi's gift and the invitation to attend Ibuki's wedding. This development surprised Fengzi and also shocked the readers of the comics. You are only a first-year student, so you probably don't understand, but third-year students are very busy preparing for exams. I don't want to waste my time on these things, so goodbye. The Mitsui girl with glasses holding her textbook in both hands not only directly rejected Fuko's gift, but also gave her reasons for rejection. Although I know that the third grade of high school is very stressful, and some readers express their understanding, many readers still cannot accept the words and deeds of the Mitsui glasses girl. Especially when I saw the disappointed look on Fuko's face when she saw the Mitsui girl with glasses walking away in the comics. By the way, when Yoshida saw this plot in the manga at Makoto Takahashi's house, he subconsciously shouted, "If the female student doesn't want it, Fuko-chan, please give me that starfish." It was so shameful declaration of appearance. What made Yoshida cry the most was that this speech was recorded by Makoto Takahashi and used to educate his child Rin Takahashi as a typical case of why you should stay away from all male creatures except your father. Although at the beginning of the comic series, Okazaki Tomoya was mistaken by many people as a scumbag from the Crystal Palace. He also appeared in the comics as a bad student. He usually liked to tease his friends Haruhara Yuhei and Fuko, but Okazaki Tomoya is actually a good person. Boys, at least when they saw Fengzi frustrated because of the Mitsui glasses girl incident, they didn't add insult to injury, but started to encourage Fengzi. I say, it's about time you cheered up. Fengzi is very energetic. It's precisely because I can't see that you are energetic that I say this. There's nothing we can do about it. Mitsui-san only said a few words to me on the day she entered school. It's already good that she can remember my Mencius. And Fengzi has never gone to class even once, I just picked up wooden blocks in the art classroom, and then carved starfish in the empty classroom. Regarding what happened with Mitsui's Glasses Girl, Fengzi showed an unexpectedly mature side, which made the readers sigh with emotion. When he is kind, he also deepens his dislike for that girl with glasses. Fengzi also wants to go to class, even if it's just once. For Tomoya Okazaki, who had confirmed Fuko's identity, after hearing Fuko's words, he immediately came up with a way to cheer up Fuko. Just gather your friends and take classes with Fengzi. After convening Haruhara Yuhei and Fujibayashi sisters, and taking advantage of the Founders' Festival, Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa brought Fuko to the school and opened the mission copy of Fuko Campus Lesson 1. Even Furukawa Nagisa's mother, Sani, made a guest appearance as a teacher. As a bad student, Tomoya Okazaki naturally behaves like a bad student. So even if it is a disguised class, concentrate on the class. This kind of thing will never happen to Okazaki Tomoya. Leaning on the table, Okazaki Tomoya glanced at Fengzi, who was trying to be a good student, and then turned his attention to looking at the scenery outside the window, falling into a contemplative mode. Ibuki Fuko, although she is a bit weird, she looks like an ordinary girl no matter how she looks at her. The last sentence at the end puts the reader into a state of shock. Because the content of this chapter is all about Fengzi's hard work, many readers have forgotten the question about Fengzi's identity, but Takahashi Makoto used this frantic reminder at the end to make the reader is once again struggling to remember. So among the readers wailing and cursing, the journey of waiting full of resentment begins again. Can Makoto Takahashi feel the resentment on the reader's side? The answer is of course, because the existence around Makoto Takahashi called assistants or editors actually belongs to the reader's side in the final analysis. When Yoshida came to Takahashi Makoto's house, he saw a scene that was familiar but different. Tintin squatted on the balcony smoking with a depressed look on his face. After occasionally looking at Makoto Takahashi, who was silent, he began to sigh. When Aoi and Mayuri had red eyes, leaning on each other, surrounded by piles of the tissues obviously meant that the two women had cried a lot before. The weirdest thing was Jing Hehe, the man with glasses lowered his head and kept drawing on the manuscript paper. No, that weird pattern should be a curse, right? As the object of the curse, Kong Jinghe raised his head from time to time and looked for it. It should be Takahashi Makoto. What is going on? The assistant's behavior seemed familiar. There was no need to think about it. He knew that Makoto Takahashi had definitely done something crazy again, but... By the way, Chen, what's wrong with you? Why do you look listless? The way. Hehe, this world is hopeless, I want to destroy, I want to destroy. Makoto Takahashi looked completely broken. This was the most terrifying thing for Yoshida. Especially listening to the intermittent thoughts from Takahashi Makoto's mouth really made Yoshida aware of the seriousness of the situation. Without a doubt, this is the choice of Steins Gate. This, what's going on? Yoshida pulled Ding Ding, who was the calmest, and asked with a stuttering expression, what happened to Aiken? I can see that Chen is about to enter the black rage mode. After Ding Ding put out the cigarette butt, he spread his hands helplessly, lit another cigarette, pointed to the comic manuscripts scattered on the table, and explained in a rather depressed tone, Mr. Yoshida, I think you will understand after reading it. Miss Rina cried for a whole day because of the content of the manga. She is probably still angry with Chen now. Prediction is one thing, knowing is another. After listening to Ding Ding's narration, Yoshida looked at the comic manuscript on the table, and his expression became a little complicated. Although as the editor in charge, reading comics is a must, but at this moment, Yoshida has a strong sense of fear and resistance to the comic manuscripts scattered on the table. There is really a problem with the comic manuscript, although it has been confirmed that there is a problem with the comic manuscript, but what is the mood that can't help but want to read it? After picking up the comic manuscript, Yoshida looked responsible, and fell into a sluggish mode, unable to extricate himself. Ahem, Yoshida, don't show this dilemma, your editorial soul is shouting and roaring. Ahem. Fengzi will write more here. After all, this is the part where a certain cat contributes a tear, so I predict in advance that everyone will have a happy Mid-Autumn festival. There will definitely be updates tomorrow, so please face the wall and think about the past if you have misunderstandings, laugh. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 300. Human beings will always have so-called unnecessary sympathy for some things. Whether it is comics or reality, there are always some things that people cannot let go of. Take the comic Clannad as an example. What happened to Fengzi can move the reader's existence, and there are more or less reasons for this. For many readers, they know that this is just a comic and they know that it is false, but the content of this chapter can make them feel depressed. In order to make her sister's wedding lively, Fengzi kept carving wooden starfish every day and gave them to every passerby who passed by. She was not asking the other party to do anything like changing the world line. Incident, he just asked the other party to attend the wedding of his sister, Mr. Ibuki, making the wedding full of lively atmosphere, nothing more. After the release of the new chapter of Clannad, readers have entered a state of confusion and depression, because the development in the comic is really unacceptable. As the editor-in-chief, Yoshida almost tried to open a copy of Talk About Life with Makoto Takahashi after reading the comic. From this point alone, it can already prove the lethality of this comic. So after the new issue of Must Win Junk was released, Yoshida looked at the rising sales again and felt like he wanted to cry without tears. As the editor-in-chief, Yoshida was the first to read the manga and said that the content of this chapter really made him confused and depressed. As mentioned at the end of the previous chapter, Okazaki Tomoya, as the protagonist, knew that Fuko's identity was a bit strange, but he still pulled Furukawa Nagisa to help Fuko, and did not dislike Fuko because Fuko was the legendary ghost girl. And did not shrink back out of fear of the unknown. Human beings will always sympathize with things that have nothing to do with themselves. Even though they know that these things are false, they can't help feeling sad about them. Just like what is described in the latest chapter of the comic Clannad. However, humans are humans after all, and they always have incomprehensible emotions about some things. This may be the reason why the comic Clannad can succeed. In order to invite the students to attend the wedding of her sister Ibuki, Fuko kept giving out wooden starfish to each student. Although in reality, not everyone can accept it, but in the comics, Fuko's share the feeling of working hard for my sister seems to be well conveyed to everyone's heart. Except for a few people with personality problems, such as a certain girl with glasses, at least everyone who accepted the wooden starfish promised to come. Attend Mr. Ibuki's wedding. In the comics, Fengzi's image of working hard for her sister has indeed moved many people. Let's not talk about the reader's side. Just in the comics, Fengzi's fan support group appeared. The cheering group started by 3 passerby boys even regarded Okazaki Tomo, who has been helping Fuko, as Fuko's older brother. This part of the content made many readers smile bitterly. However, the happy plot ended just like this. The development behind this chapter gave many readers an ominous premonition. First of all, Haruhara Yuhei, who is a good friend of the male protagonist Okazaki Tomoya, raised his own questions to the male protagonist Okazaki Tomoya. While Fuko was handing out wooden starfish, she was completely ignored by the soy sauce characters on the road, which made the nervous Haruhara Hinata want to know the truth. Then in the school, more and more passers-by ignored Fengzi's existence. Many people even completely ignored Fengzi and fully started the pass-by mode. No matter how hard Fengzi tried, those people seemed not to notice at all. Just like Fengzi, he just left to care for himself, causing the number of wooden starfish Fengzi sent out every day to gradually decrease. Then came the fatal blow from Fuko's sister, Mr. Ibuki. Fuko's sister, Mr. Ibuki, told Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa that the doctor said that Fuko's condition has further deteriorated and she may remain in a vegetative state and cannot wake up. Faced with this development, Fuko's sister Ibuki Kimiko even entered a confused state of is it really okay to get married like this, and planned to move to a place closer to Fuko Hospital after hastily getting married. Although Okazaki Tomoya is a bad student, in the comics, he shows the true qualities of a real man. In order to help Fuko realize her wish, Okazaki Tomoya took Furukawa Nagisa to find the legendary Master Yukimura in the school, and successfully asked Yukimura to convince the school principal and other teachers to allow Ibuki-san's wedding to be held in the school held in. Although in the end, thanks to the efforts of Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa, Mr. Ibuki decided to hold a wedding at school and get married as soon as possible, but regardless of Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa in the manga, they still read the manga. Readers have already vaguely noticed that the comic seems to have entered a confusing route. Looking at this development in the comics, many readers felt that this was the best development path, and they even forgot about the brutal nature of the Phoenix Academy murderer in the comics. If the manga develops as you do, readers will definitely feel resentful. When Yoshida finished reading this chapter, he did not fall into the entangled and indignant mode like the readers did, but out of responsibility. As for the responsibility of editing, Yoshida has indeed done what he should do very well. This development is really cruel, can't it be modified? My beloved cat, this is where you are stupid. In response to Yoshida's remarks, Takahashi Makoto responded with a disdainful tone, Fuko-chan's plot is just a sentinel to broaden your horizons. As the final chapter of Clannad the Fighting Power, the subsequent plot is much more brutal. Of course, if you can't even bear this level, I will be very satisfied with the content behind the comic. Yoshida is not a time traveler, so he doesn't know how ferocious and tear-jerking Clannad is. Naturally, Makoto Takahashi will not tell Yoshida about the development of the manga after Clannad. Although Clannad is the ending of the healing series, before readers can feel the so-called healing, they must first experience some so-called torture and pain. The most brutal blow in the comic is naturally the ending, the fatal blow from the Founders' Festival. Under the persuasion of Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa, Mr. Ibuki finally agreed to return to school to participate in the Founders' Festival. Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa decided to let Fuko meet their sister, so on the day of the Founders' Festival, they took Fuko to the school gate to pick up Mr. Ibuki. I haven't been here for a long time, so I feel a little nervous. It's obviously the same place, but it feels like a school somewhere else. Because there are all students I don't know. In the manga, Mr. Ibuki came to the school as scheduled. They met the three of them, Tomoya Okazaki and Nagisa Furukawa, who were carrying Fuko. However, Mr. Ibuki said something confusing with a smile on his face, so I finally breathed a sigh of relief when I saw you two. Many people on the reader side suddenly fell into a tangled state when they saw this. Standing in front of Mr. Ibuki, apart from Tomoya Okazaki and Nagisa Furukawa, there is also Fuko-chan, who has been working hard all this time. But judging from Mr. Ibuki's performance, he didn't notice Fuko-chan's presence at all. Fengzi has been working hard to invite students from the school to attend her sister's wedding. However, when she actually faced her sister Ibuki, she couldn't meet her. Although this development can prove Fengzi's existence, there is a ghost girl in the legend, but how many readers still care about this issue? Counting the content of the previous chapter, Fuko-chan's hard work has left a deep impression on the reader's memory. In the latest chapter, it is seen that Okazaki Tomo intends to let Fengzi-chan. When the two sisters met, many people were expecting and happy. However, the development in the comics was beyond the expectations of many readers. Even though they were facing each other, Ibuki-san couldn't see his sister Ibuki Fuko. Facing the stunned Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa, Mr. Ibuki showed a puzzled look on his face, and asked them in confusion, "Excuse me, what happened?" "Furukawa-san. Okazaki-san." Fengzi, who has obviously been working hard, and who has successfully invited many passers-by and classmates, actually enters a state of unable to see when they meet when she really faces her sister Ibuki-kun. This kind of content is enough to make readers everyone on the side couldn't accept it at all. What makes readers most indignant is that the content of this chapter actually ends here. The content of the last page of the comic stops at the picture of the four people meeting each other. This abrupt ending firmly adheres to the consistent practice of the cartoonist Phoenix Inferno. For the efforts that have been made silently, the reward is completely useless. Human beings will always have so-called sympathy for this kind of thing, and will feel sympathy and regret for the person who works silently, just like this chapter Planet Jaune, everything Fengzi did. Although in the previous episode, Mitsui-san, the bespectacled girl who once rejected Fuko, took the initiative to approach Fuko in this episode, accepted Fuko's wooden starfish, and promised to join Ibuki if she was free. The prince's wedding, however, such a happy change cannot alleviate the reader's entanglement at all in the face of the final development of the comic. Giving others hope while giving others more despair, this is the development of the comic Clannad. This also made many readers, after reading this chapter of the comic, start to complain about the murderous and crazy setting of the cartoonist Phoenix Institute. Chen, let me just say that the development of comics like this will cause readers to complain, right? In addition to gloating about his misfortune, Yoshida's face looked more worried. Holding a sample of the latest monthly magazine, Yoshida tried to enter into the task of persuading Makoto Takahashi, this is enough to draw. For the content of the next chapter, if possible, let the Fuko sisters meet. Otherwise, this will, Fuko-chan is so pitiful. My beloved cat, now is not the time, Makoto Takahashi, who entered the mad cartoonist mode, reprimanded Yoshida unceremoniously while drawing comics, this level is not enough. More is needed. More memorable stories will do. But Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with a troubled face, trying to start the persuasion mode again, but unfortunately he was interrupted by someone who was drawing comics. There's nothing good about it. My beloved is a cat. The reason why this masterpiece is called a masterpiece is because all its developments have already been decided. It's true, all of this is Stein's, Gates' choice. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, dear readers. Sorry, it's Mid-Autumn Festival, but it reminded you of Fengzi's story, which made you have depressing memories. I apologize for this. Well, anyway, today or every day after that, please say it happily. The above is Miao, mathematical intersection symbol. Mathematical intersection symbol,